Ethan, what's up, man? You should come over here into Julio's office. Be part of the.
Is that where you are?
Yeah.
I'm about.
Are you around the corner?
Yeah, I'm in a booth, probably just about a minute from you. No, I'll let you do your thing there.
Room.
I'll just hang back here.
Okay, we'll just wait a few minutes to get. Hi, Chris and Pia.
Hi there, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you.
Hello.
Good to see you. Okay.
Are you using Dino Chargers or Super Dino?
All right, so I think that we can get started as people continue to join. Are you ready, Alison, if I start sharing my screen and then you can walk through the agenda? Good, so let me start sharing real quick on this side. All right, can everybody see my screen? Awesome.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to today's session. I'm really excited about today because we have, you may have seen her already, Lauren up a bit later, who's going to be going through some amazing content on data-driven triggers. Today's agenda, we're going to do a check-in as usual, and we're going to look at where we are in the course. And then we're going to hand over to Lauren, and Lauren's going to give her great session, a great presentation, and we're going to have some Q&A. And after that, we're going to do as we usually do, have an exercise. We're going to draw on a lot of Lauren's content and start having a discussion about how we can apply it practically within our roles. So yeah, let's do a check-in, a quick check-in. So what I'm interested to know from you, this session's quite futuristic. When you sort of think about Lauren's content and putting clients at the centre and data-driven triggers, it's quite futuristic. So I'm interested to know what you're excited about right now, whether that's a client that you're working with, a project you're on, a brief that you've just received, or even an opportunity that you've perhaps seen in the past week or month that you're quite interested in exploring more within your role. So yeah, let's start off with that question. Who'd like to go first? What are you excited about right now?
I'm happy to go.
Thanks, Pete.
So we've just taken a brief and we're working with a client to be one of the first partners to soft launch the M1 platform in the UK. So fairly relevant and pretty exciting, although legals and bureaucracy at the moment are holding us up a little bit, but still excited once we get past that.
Fantastic, thank you. Who do you nominate to go next?
Pia.
So yeah, thanks for picking me next. I'm quite excited about the hackathon we're holding tomorrow. So we're doing that to automate a bit of a part of our process, and that's how we process all the media data that we start to use for modeling. So we're all learning a bit of coding skills, doing some VBA in Excel as well. And yeah, I'm quite excited to see what we'll achieve by the end of the week.
Are you running it or being a part of it?
I am actually, I kind of created it, but then I'm getting one of my team members to run it. So yeah, it'll be very, very exciting to see how it goes.
Awesome.
But it's something that we plan to do for a while, so finally found some time to do it.
Excellent. And who would you like to go next, Pia?
I will pick Ariella.
Okay, so it's not very excited, but we've had some challenges here with the client and the team. So it was just yesterday was a very good day of discussions of kind of getting everything out there and in the open and make sure that everyone is aligned and still working in the same direction. So I'm excited to see that. Hopefully we'll get over this bit of like a down period and continue onward.
Excellent. Thank you, Ariella. Sounds great. Who would you like to nominate to go next?
Laura.
Okay. Well, first that we have a long weekend coming next week, so very excited about that one. And also that we are working with a client in a tool that we have developed locally to able to plan out of home in a digital way. So we are just working on that and kicking off in various retailers. So I'm excited about that. I nominate Jorge.
Hi, I'm excited working if we have to integrate data partners and also creative personalization in an effective way. And also we have to prove it. So very excited about this session today.
Excellent, thanks Jorge.
And it would be Miko.
Hey, so I'm excited about marketing automation. We just made a new hire as a new person started on Monday as a head of marketing automation in Icebar, Finland, and we are in the middle of big pitch for Finnish railways actually. So I'm quite excited about that.
Awesome.
And Edward, you can be the next.
Hello. Is this vocational excitement?
It can be anything.
Well, I've just got in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm the fastest padlock over a marathon distance in the London Marathon. So I'll be in the book for everyone to buy this Christmas. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my God!
Which is pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
And from a work perspective, helping reorganize the marketing and new business structure for my agency and the global silo, which is not quite as exciting in my books, but it's still exciting.
Awesome, thank you. So congratulations, Edward, that's awesome, that's amazing.
Thanks very much, thank you.
Brilliant. Who would you nominate to follow you on that? I mean, I wouldn't like to follow you on that with exciting news, but who would you nominate?
I've seen a friendly face there, John Pyle. You're on mute, mate. Still on mute.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Congratulations, mate. Well done.
Thank you.
I know you trained hard for that. So I am a couple of days back from the birth of my second child, so I'm excited about
oh my God.
Trying to balance work. Am I excited about balancing work with two children? I don't know. I'm interested.
Congratulations.
And to be honest, I'm just excited about kind of getting back into it, finding the challenges that our clients have unearthed while I've been off, and yeah, kind of cracking into those.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations again. Lovely news. Very awesome.
And then who hasn't been? Chetan?
Cool, thanks. Yeah, it's a brilliant ones to follow. Those that say it's quite tough. They're great news for both you guys. Professionally, I'm excited about. We're launching a new planning tool product called Velocity across Visium, which is a kind of an econometric ecosystem modeling tool, and we're at the beta stage of this, and we're at full product launch at the end of this month. So it's quite exciting, training people up and getting everyone using that tool. So that's what's going on in my world at the moment.
Thank you.
Hi there, it's Nina here.
Hi, Nina.
Hi, Nina.
Hi there. Sorry, I joined a little bit late today. We have a new CEO starting in Cara UK. So yeah, I'm looking forward to excited about, I guess, what the future brings, and there will be change. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Wonderful, thank you. Who hasn't been? Who do you nominate, Nina?
I think we have Lucy and
Chris as well.
Nicole, Caroline, Dale, yeah, and Charlotte. Just go. Whoever feels like popping, just pop.
Shall I go now? Hello, everyone. Yeah, I guess the thing I'm excited about at the moment, we're working on the launch of a consumer digital-only bank for Goldman Sachs in the UK. It's their first foray into the consumer world. So yeah, we're getting pretty close to launch now. So that's the most exciting thing professionally in my world.
Thank you, Chris. Lucy, you haven't been yet.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Hi, guys. I haven't actually managed to book a room, so I'm going to try and speak relatively quietly. So apologies if I'm whispering. I think personally I'm excited because I've just had 3 days in northern Spain, eating and drinking nice wine. Professionally, I think I'm probably most excited about the fact that we've just moved back to Triton Street. So our business are now back in headquarters. So that's quite an exciting move for Isobar from Wells Street. So we're looking forward to kind of connecting better with everybody here across the brands.
Brilliant, thank you. Charlotte, you haven't been. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, shall I go? Sorry, I'm coming into this late. So I'd say personally for me, the most exciting thing I'm doing at the moment is finishing a book that I've been writing that's taken me a little while about having my first son. So the trials and tribulations of that. And then professionally, we are currently going through quite a big team change internally, which on one hand isn't exciting because it means change. But on the other side of that, I'm looking forward to creating a new team and seeing what we can do with them. So that's me.
Brilliant, thank you. Charlotte?
Yeah, in my personal life, I'm introducing my son to kindergarten this week, so that will be exciting. But otherwise, we had got a small brief from a Finnish client that wants to launch their product or their service in Sweden, so they need help from us, Visium and iProspect, and I love those kind of new biz openings that's really tiny and just looking forward to build that to a great case. So that's my excitement right now.
Great, thank you. Who else hasn't been? I think we've got a couple of people that are still waiting to go.
Hi, I'll go next then. For me, it's although it's quite contradictory, but the upcoming pitches, I know it's a real big workload that will be coming on top, but from the past I've known that I've always learned a lot from it, so I'm excited to get the opportunity to learn again from those potential new clients.
Wonderful. And I think last but not least, Mikolaj.
Hi, I've just joined. Sorry, I haven't heard your question.
So our question is, what are you excited about right now?
About the current pitch for Pandora. I see that Lauren is present, so she knows it very well, because I've asked her about a few things today and yesterday. So the Pandora pitch is just...
This Pandora?
Yeah, I can see, yeah, probably yes, this.
How exciting.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thanks everyone for checking in. As always, just lots going on with you. And I think you'll get a lot out of this session. So just a very briefly to go through where we are now, I'm really keen to get into Lauren's presentation, so I won't spend too long on this. But as you'll see, we're about a third of the way into the course now. So this is the second part of module 2, which is putting clients at the centre. So today is understanding clients through data. And we are in between this session and the next live session, we are going to be arranging and setting up some one-to-one coaching with you just to see how you're getting on and what support you need. Hazel, do you have any more info on how that's going to work?
Yeah, so we will send out a calendar sign up where you can just grab a slot that will work for you guys that Tim, Allison, and I will have available. And it's, as Allison mentioned, is in the upcoming weeks. It'll be 50 minutes. And we would, support you through the process of where you are at in the program and just in general with anything that you're dealing with as it pertains to leadership. So it should be quite exciting. Yeah. And so for this modules, we had Tim, Aline or Aline. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Sorry, but I'm glad that you just had some time to watch Tim's webinar from a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend it. It's a nice bridge into what Lauren is doing today. And then also yesterday we posted some content, pre-recorded content that we have from Andrew Balfour, who's working at Netflix. And it's a 20-minute video, super inspiring and insightful as how they're leveraging data inside of Netflix to develop communications and connect with people. I love the fact that he almost humanizes data, which I think is also a very interesting approach to the new world that we're living in. Yeah, and so with that in mind, Alison, I don't know if you have any special intro for Lauren, or should we just dive right in?
We just go straight into it. And firstly, just thank Lauren for being here today. And as I said, I've kind of sat through this content with Lauren, and it's pretty mind-blowing. So I'm really interested to hear.
That's setting the bar.
But it's true. So Lauren, yeah, over to you. We've got your slides, so we'll just flick through them as you need them.
Yeah, and because I've heard your content, I kind of know when to flip over the slides, but also feel free to just say next.
I shall. Good. All right. So here we go. So I think the nice thing for me sitting in an EMEA role and sitting here in London and being, as Chetan knows and Mikolai knows, a recovering American working for this company, living here in the UK for 6 years, it's been quite an interesting journey. The past year working on global clients like AB InBev, most recently working with some of the team on Adidas, working with Mikolai on Pandora, Chetan actually, sorry, he was a partner in crime on the ABI pitch, but then also some other smaller ones, or maybe not so small, like what we did with Sky across Europe and UK. And then there's a few other bits and pieces and on VF services right now. So across my job, I guess for EMEA, I've been able to work on a lot of the data narratives as we've continued to figure out what does M1 mean to any of us. In some places it's real and it exists for the markets, and other places it's not there yet. So how are we telling the story? How does it make sense? And what actually is going on, with our clients? What kind of questions are they asking us, and how are they asking us the same question, but in different ways? And so what I thought I would use here is kind of a culmination of a lot of different experiences all together. I think Mikolai and Chetan, you guys in particular, will have seen some of these slides already. I think John, when we worked on the Sky pitch, some of this stuff hadn't been totally played out yet. So it'll be new stuff for you guys to use in the next exciting round of whatever we've got on the table. So with that, I hope that this is new for some of you completely, and it's useful. And for those of you who kind of know some of the stories since I've worked with you, hopefully you see some new additions and some new folds you hadn't seen before. All right, so there you go. That's my little intro.
And I think just to build on what you just said, Lauren, if you guys have already seen this and you want to build on anything Lauren is sharing of how you've used this in your own experience, feel free.
Yes, please do. Please, I'm going to ask Hazel and Allison to kind of watch for any sort of hand raising. And I'll try to do some good pauses where I actually would rather, I kind of want, because we have so many brands represented here, I'd love perspective of what you see in your own market and from your own client base and where they sit. All right, so basically, you'll have seen some chart like this at some point before. But in some of the attempts recently in trying to figure out how do we communicate our overall DAN strategy of moving to people-based marketing, what in the world does that mean? And how can we talk about it across a journey that a lot of our clients are facing, where you have some clients who still do, and actually most of what we do in TV today is around panel and demographic buys, right? Essentially all the audience work we're planning, all the insights we're doing is coming a lot from this, the panels, and in some markets, like I think Jorge from Spain and Cara in particular, you have the benefit of what Marta and the team are doing locally with taking the Tuluna panel, linking it to digital, so kind of making that leap from the panel to that digital space. And so there's a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes from our side to say, how can I go from the basics of what we've always done in targeting based on demographics up the next level to what's happening in digital. The same thing's actually happening, as you can imagine, for our clients. So as you discuss with your clients, there's various topics that are top of mind for the folks, especially in the media department, around should I have a DMP or should I not? What kinds of things, can you guys help me do in some MarTech investments, like maybe email, or what should I be doing with Google 360 that I'm not doing? Or how should I better use any of the input that I get on my .com website? So there's a lot of stuff internally that customers are trying to do to better understand their customer, especially if they're a brand that has a one-to-one relationship. So if you're dealing with retailers, I've forgotten the gentleman who talked about what you're doing for Goldman Sachs, right? They're trying to go after consumer, but most of their clients currently are institutional. So you have a lot of clients who are on their side at the same bottom part that we are, saying, I don't really know who these people are. I'm just buying segments from Experian or the local credit bureau to try to do some sort of stuff on my own media areas or my own direct channels through email. So there's still a lot of stuff that's happening in marketing and in advertising in that bottom left. But where you see that little blue hexagon where it says most clients are here, at this point, most of our clients have invested in some sort of Google Analytic, whether it's the free or they've paid for it. And a lot of our iPro team are making really good money out of, helping clients use that better. We have a huge shift towards once Salesforce bought Crux, they've been going on a rampage now of trying to basically sell that into every single client. So we've seen lots of CPG companies now using Crux. You have others like, I know Mikolai, you guys encounter, and actually in Turkey, you guys encounter a lot of Blue Kai. In the Nordics, I know there's quite a bit of ad form. So there's a lot of different technologies that are kind of delivering a DMP solution, not to mention what we do with our Mnet Audience Center and the other assets that we use. Then you've got the investment clients are making in their .com, so in their various cloud platforms. And then you have this loads of different, or a graveyard or an active area of mobile apps. So what we try to talk to customers about is there's lots of this digital kind of dust going around where consumers are known as a cookie, as a device ID, as some sort of footprint, but it's very disconnected from everything else you know about them. So we have, programmatic, we have Google AdWords, we have all these things that are going on, but how do you figure out who that customer is and how do you actually write the right brand campaign to send them the right message at the right time? And that's obviously what we've been doing for years, but now it's just that much more complex. And so we said, really, the whole strategy in buying Merkle and starting to do new ways of working and starting to centralize some of the data talent across our teams is because we know if we know who we're targeting, we can make performance media work that much harder and we can be very sure of the budget. And there's lots of, does everyone else see the cursor moving around quite a bit? Or is it just me?
No, we can see that actually. I'm just gonna
because it's like
yeah,
it's like
let me start it over. Let me start the sharing over. And tell me if that's also happening. I'm just getting to your slides. How about now?
It's steady on right now for the upper right corner from what I can see.
Yeah, I can still see it.
That's okay, as long as it's not like moving around so much, let's hope. So then we get to the point of obviously like what we're calling the known known. So if you actually know who the people are that you're speaking to, you should be able to write really good campaigns. Your investment in your performance channels should be really good, and it should free up a load of money to do brand and other sorts of digital experience things with your budget that everyone would really love to do. And so we've kind of said that this is a bit of a feedback loop. And the most important thing is in our investment in bringing M1 to life, it's one of the things we kind of coined recently was it's bringing CRM to the CRM-less. So when we think about the proposal that M1 brings, we're thinking about we have a whole view of these real people all in a nice little package database. We understand where these people exist on a various group of publishers and match partners. And so if we can actually pick one audience and then plan against it so that that audience is hit and receives the message at the channel where they need to interact with it, you're not sending a message out to a person 5 different times because they're 5 different cookies. So it's really plan once with one audience and distribute that audience as effective as possible. And so that's why we've told our clients it's really a journey of us and them together. And it's using their investments in data and technology, our investments in data technology, ultimately using media as a place for people to hand raise and say, hi, I'm Lauren Walker, I like your brand, and I want to tell you who I am so you can treat me better and be more personal with me. And so it's really building that brand conversation that we believe is something unique that media can now do that it never did before by bringing essentially CRM, MarTech, AdTech, kind of all together in the media chain. So that's some of the storyline that we were telling here. And so I know working across EMEA with a lot of the different markets, we can tell the story with whatever we currently have in terms of our people and technology in those markets. And then depending if our client is global or local, there's a way to make this very much a partnership discussion rather than something that we own this, give us all your data, right? Because I think that's one thing that we've seen from a few clients is they're like, I've got my data, I want to invest in the technology, I'm bringing more and more in-house because I want to be in charge of my most important asset, which is my customer data. So I want a partner who I can work with. And so you see the model of the agency client changing a lot from being give me a load of money and I'll just do stuff with it to transparency, to partnership, to technology deployment, etc. So I want to pause there to see where there's people who have like, I'd say contrarian and similar experiences and maybe some of their markets just to get some kind of live feedback and to keep this not so sedentary for all of you. Otherwise, I end up calling on people I know.
Lauren, I've got a question for you actually. That just because this is a fairly new chart that I've seen kind of being used recently. On both the first 2 layers, you have unknown known. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Hugh asked me the same thing. So if you go back to the chart, the reason why we said it was unknown known is that there are actual people that we've done. So for instance, in Africa, we literally do face-to-face interviews for the panel. And so we can see that person. We know what color eyes they have. We know the shape of their face. We know their haircut. We know what outfits they wear, right? So there's certain things we literally, as the person doing the interview, know this person exists and that they're real and what they look like. When we're doing the things on digital, we have no idea what these people actually look like. We just know that they're this kind of device ID, they're this IP, they're at this latitude and longitude, and they tend to have a contextual bias to flipping through fashion magazine, fashion website, and then they go to an auto website, and then they do a Google ad search, right? So they are an actual human. I mean, there's plenty of bots out there, so don't get me wrong, but there is a human there, but we don't know what they look like. So it's 2 different kind of places from which we're extrapolating to lookalikes and an actual audience. So that's what we meant by unknown known, that it's like a real, person, but the dimensions and what we know about them are very different. And that's where, again, you can imagine with the way we've done panels, it's attitudes, it's motivations and things like that. Whereas the digital dust is much more about a click and time. And it's a very different kind of data point. Thank you for asking that question because that's actually really, really important.
No, it's clear. I get it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Anyone else?
I keep my dramatic pause going here because I definitely would.
Lauren, I've got a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Chris? No. Yeah, it's Chris. Yeah, that's right. Hi.
Nice.
everything you said makes complete sense, the journey, etc., etc. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask, but the bit I can't get my head around is that, you know, the opportunity M1 brings. I don't understand how it's GDPR friendly.
Well, I'll pass that to Mahisha Rupan and to John Lee to give you a deep answer. And I think it's a very fair question. And I think as we have seen, at this point, the only markets that are live with M1 are, well, UK, congratulations, right? We just did it Monday, as far as I know. That's, at least it was supposed to be Monday. And then we've got Australia and the US. And having been part of the teams that are trying to launch M1 in Germany, and then looking at what are we going to do in France and Russia and all the other ones that are coming on board, I think there's this recognition that the law may be one thing, but the citizens' values and the brand's values in that market are another. So what we've been able to do in the UK is very much around, we're creating an identity graph that says this person is real, but we're not necessarily saying we're going to send an ad to this person. So I'd say it's what you'd expect lawyers and business people to agree on as a gray area in the law that feels comfortable to citizens and brands of this country. Now, working with Werner and Ulrika in the German group, and I don't think we have any Germans from what I could remember, or maybe we have Germans who are working out of other offices now. But in the German market, it's a very different thing, right? The Germans are they have very, very strong rules already. They're looking to bring e-privacy into action before the EU does, which basically means you have to log in to every website you ever view, which is great for Google, great for Facebook. But for the rest of the publishers that are out there, they've got to figure a way to manage that. And actually, it's really good for us because we already know all the people we want to partner with. So in essence, it'll be a much smaller market because how many people will truly opt in to see ads except for in the big walled gardens where they have a social network. So it'll be an interesting phenomenon. But the biggest challenge we've had with M1 overall is, does the people data actually exist? That is probably the biggest, I think, surprise. And that's why I call myself the recovering American, because until you've left the US and lived in other countries and worked in other countries, you really don't know how Europe is a confederation of European states. And even within each country, Spain has multiple different provinces that, as we've seen, I lived in Salamanca for a while, but as we've seen with Catalan and like referendums, and especially the way that Europe feels right now, it's like the battle of the tribes. So there's all sorts of stuff that's going on. And in that kind of environment where you have so many cultural views and you have kind of a humanity that thinks about things in a different way than the Americans because they're a much younger country and capitalism rules, it's kind of the wild, wild west over there in the US right now. You can do whatever you want with data. Whereas in the rest of most of the EU, it's a very different state where companies like Axiom and Experian, who are credit bureaus or supporting marketing causes, they've had a really tough time making a suitable business case over collecting people data. So what you'll see shortly is kind of a guidance on how we're going to roll out M1 across the rest of the world and how it's going to be more of a framework and how it's going to vary. It's going to be the same user interface, so it'll all look the same, but it's going to be, what does that actually mean for each market and where are they on that journey to getting to people? And one of the key pivots that Mikolai probably is tired of me hearing talk about, and Chetan maybe to a lesser degree, is that the pivot we have to do in Europe in particular is think about, how do I partner with my client to use all the data they have permission to collect? And then everything I can figure out with running their Google 360, everything I can figure out in terms of who, and from an Amplify perspective, I think there's Aline, right? That's where you are. How do I think about all of the partners I work with? Where do I have the biggest spend? And where can I actually help that partner figure out how to build a customer data graph? So at least in some cases, I can do a one-to-one where the client says, here's my CRM. We're in the middle kind of adding some attributes from CCS and some other things. And then we say, this publisher here that we helped bring up to a level of sophistication to work with, how can we do people-based for that publisher? Or how is it done better in Facebook or somewhere else? So I think we have our work cut out for us, but I think what we're doing and what we're trying to do is right. And I think the network in general is trying to make sure, from a data and technology perspective, whether it's through the CDO organization or how we're working between Amplify and Merkle and Amnet, we're trying to get you guys there so the tools are in your hands rather than you having to invent stuff every day to figure out like, holy shit, how do I do this? So I think that's very positive. So that was a really long answer to your M1 gray area, but hopefully there's value in there for everyone here.
Thank you.
I've got a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of building on that a little bit, I think the articulation of those 3 stages is, again, it's something new for me, and you know, it represents a really simple way of telling a client how it works. I think the kind of questions that we're getting is when we're advising clients that it's a great thing that they're looking into DMP selection, so that all we're doing is activating on the data lake they're creating, which is fantastic, you know, and it means that they have ownership over it. I think the issue we find is outside of GDPR and uploading it, it's a simple narrative of how that one-to-one works. And obviously I've spent time with Stefan and, you know, and discussed that at length, but it's landing that with clients is probably where we're facing a bigger challenge. We can get around the whole concept of the fact that, you know, M1 was being launched into the UK as GDPR hit. So we went from a blank canvas, there's loads of due diligence. That's I can kind of live with that narrative. It's more how the magic dust works and the data sources, etc., that I have struggled with the couple of clients that we're, albeit one is looking to on board, but you know, that's where we're struggling.
Yeah, and I think we actually saw that through the Sky pitch, actually, where at one point they were like, so this looks like a DMP, but we know it's kind of more than that, but how is it more than that? And we had the same thing with ABI. So ABI literally in our kickoff session was like, so I've invested in Crux and I've invested in M1. So how do those things work together? And I think those are the things that we all need to push back onto the M1 team to say, listen, you guys invented this thing. I'm sure you've had this question before from people in America, because all of them have a DMP. And they got the initial 20% ROI out of it because they cut budget from their media agency, and now they don't know what to do with it because it's like no longer effective. So now you're telling me you have all this people data, but that's what Crux told me, that's what BlueKai told me, that's what Adobe told me. So are they lying? And I think this is the crux of where we are as an industry, is do we really want to tell people like programmatic is a shit show? You know, it's like, it is a lot of guessing. And so now we're bringing this thing that's telling you exactly this is who we're targeting. But it only works in, you know, let's say 3 countries. So everywhere else, it's a bit of a gamble. So that's a narrative you don't really want to have. You know, that's a conversation that I think no one really wants to have. And so it becomes a really difficult thing, which becomes extremely nuanced. And so that's where I give you one kind of sales point, at least for those of you who have an Adobe client. What the US team has done is they've actually synced the Adobe DMP ID with M1. And so I know they should be doing that in the UK as well. And so essentially they're able to then use the Adobe DMP, you could say like site visit, or, you know, all the digital information that the DMP is capturing. So when retargeting and stuff like that is done, it's actually done retargeting based on people. So they're kind of saying, I'm essentially a layer on top of your DMP to make it people-based. And so I'll ride on it using the ID. And now that we've seen Salesforce, you know, increase, so Salesforce Crux is on Coke, it's on Kellogg, it's in ABI, it's moving into Adidas, it's moving into VF. So anywhere you have a Salesforce CRM, those guys are all about putting in Crux as almost like a lost lead. So they're probably barely making any sort of profit on it, but they know they're going to get services revenue and all this other stuff. So if there's one thing I think you guys can walk away with, it would definitely be who's using Salesforce CRM in your client base, because Crux is going to be knocking on that door. And I think they told us when we were speaking to them about how can we become a better partner from understanding how to do media tagging on it and audiences, and how can we deploy it and be a Salesforce partner. It was something like, we were talking to them at the end of last year. And I think we kind of said, well, we think we can do 8 to 10 deployments. So Sophie Wooler and some of the team are helping us actually on the strategy locally on ABI, if you guys know Sophie. And we have Ben Gott and Periscopics from Merkle, who has a small team that knows how to, let's say, deploy it technically. So we're like, we got, you know, I don't know, 6 or 7 people. We can maybe do 5 to 7 deployments. Salesforce, like, we got 80. So how are you going to do that? You know, so it's just like, whoa, 80 across Europe. Holy God. So I think that's the one thing that, is a lot of the corporates who have made decisions in the US are now pushing that DMP decision down. And so as we find more clients having a DMP, that question, Peter, about I have a DMP. How does that work with M1? That becomes all that more important for us in Europe, especially given GDPR and them saying, well, I'm not really sure you can target on people, right? So those are the questions we need to feed back to Kelly Ledger and the broader kind of M1 board to say, there's a lot of questions that are specific to us, and we need, in some ways, maybe what Stefan, Kelly and I should set up for Europe is essentially like a drop-in time every other Friday that allows anyone to drop in and say, what's your question of the week on M1? So that there's a place and a time where it's when I worked at IBM for about 10 years, and that was one of the things we did with a lot of new acquisitions. We just had drop-in hours, so people could call and not get stuck in email hell. So does that sound like a reasonable? I'm seeing nods. I saw at least enough nods, so I'm like, that's at least 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, obviously, there is complexity in how that narrative comes across, and obviously we're good at keeping things simple for clients. So any simplification of that narrative is kind of what I'm all about, really.
But then also knowing the details. Yeah, don't worry, we're moving on to the slides.
I was going to say, we've only got 20 minutes of your time, and I want to make sure we get through everything.
These are all critical. These are all super critical. So I feel like thank you for all of those, guys. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, and this actually starts to bring to life some of the questions we spoke about. So another thing we've started to do is we said, how can we explain this to the brand people in the room in particular, who may not really understand what all this digital stuff is all about, and they may understand it but not really want to think about it. So we said the reason why it's so hard to understand who a customer is because you've got the first thing is maybe they see a brand video, okay? So that's really more about awareness. I love the brand, fine. Then that person does a click, and then maybe 10 days go by, maybe a few hours go by, maybe they've gone from their mobile phone to their work computer, and now they're on the landing page, and they're looking at the landing page, and then they're doing a site visit. And so these are colored orange because this is something mostly our client owns. So yes, GA360 does some stuff, but also if you're using a Salesforce Commerce Cloud, they're collecting loads of information on what you're doing on the commerce site as well, which is, again, telling you about those consumers who have chosen to engage with you and are kind of, you could say, delivering part of this digital attribution. Then you go onto the Facebook ad and you actually see a product type media advertisement. So you've gone from a brand thing to now you're into this product one. You've done the post Facebook ad. So all of that is in the media segment. Most of it, iPro does quite a bit of work around that bit. Then you've got category content, product content. So now we're back on the .com, and this person is, again, this whole journey could happen over like 1 day, 3 days, a month. And so we tried to make the point that what you really want to do is you want to kind of take all of these digital signals, all of those things in the middle hexagon of that last page across all the technology you've invested in, and try to link it back to a person, right? It's not, otherwise you're always taking guesses. So ultimately, if our clients are starting to standardize across the globe, or at least inside multiple brands against one technology, we can do much better at figuring out who these customers are. And then ultimately, back to the point of where does M1 start to deliver some value, it's that M1 ID that the client can then use inside their own systems to say, this is who that person is, but so can we. So it's making that connection, and that's why I kind of like call it CRM for the CRM list. If we have this database of people, or if we have this ID that says it's a person, we can help our clients start to learn about who their customers actually are. And I think a lot of the times our clients have heard the story in their marketing departments, in their IT departments, from Accenture Digital, from Deloitte Digital, from IBM Experience, but the advertising and media guys haven't necessarily heard it. And that's why we oftentimes still see the brand budget as one thing, sometimes still performance as another, and then .com, e-com as another. And so there's been 3 pitches now that have come into us globally that have asked for, how do we bring brand and e-com together through a media strategy? And so that's where some of this starts to really resonate, where you start thinking about, what are all the brands that I have into Aegis, what are all the levers I can pull? Next slide, forward. These are all the brands. So this is where, this is not perfect, so please don't take it as like the only way to do it. But for those of you in Isobar, and for those of you who know Google, you will have seen some of this framework in the middle before in terms of the story about the funnel. And so if you think about how we're starting to craft messages of Cara powered by Dan, Visium powered by Dan, iPro powered by Dan. The whole story is about, we're doing a lot of brand media at the top in display and TV. Some of that's going to be segment based. Some of it can be quite specific, but it's only if we have all that data actually connected from the client system and our system. Then you go down to the performance media segment, where now you have people who are actually hand raising and saying, I am literally actively shopping. I may or may not like your brand. So what are the triggers and what are the content to actually trigger a shopper who likes, I'll pick on Adidas for now, or Pandora for that matter. How do I pick on a shopper that already likes my brand, which means it should be a much faster pass through this funnel, versus someone who's really not quite sure yet. But if I can move them with an influencer, if I can move them with some other tactic, how can I get them to maybe try my brand this first time? And then you start looking at all the information that you collect over campaigns and decisions. And I think it was Pia here from D2D, right? So you bring in the wealth of information from D2D to help make sure you're kind of hitting maximum returns with minimum investment across all the different channels you have available. Not minimum investment, but ideal investment. Then you've got what Merkle and Periscopics and iPro are doing around how do I optimize around GA360 and all the other Google stack that's available to me. Isobar jumping in and saying, how can I make this a better digital experience between offline and online? So each time you go down the funnel, you start to see how the Dan network can work together to deliver a very people-based story, but it's different facets of our brands that allow us to do that. And we're not necessarily structured to do this today, but we're trying to. And I think the big thing that, Giulio Malagori, who's my boss, who's CEO of EMEA, he saw this in Italy a long, long time ago, and so did Kirill in Russia, because I think we have someone from Russia here, and it's the same thing Julius saw in the Netherlands, right? We had our CEOs who had a small enough market and saw the different brands and saw the growth of data being really important to clients and said, wait a minute, there's a way that we need to think about data in the context of Dan Media clients that's new and different, that can differentiate us towards new revenues. And so this is where all of EMEA now has a data unit, sometimes called Dentsu Data Services, sometimes called DNA, that's trying to bring people from all of these brands together to start telling the story and to start bringing our technology, our teams, our thinking, and the narrative to light, so you guys can actually deliver against this to clients and be literally the only agency that can truly do this because of our strategy and our people and the kind of the local P&L. So that's what's really exciting to me. And so the way that we ended up delivering this in the Adidas pitch was, we kind of said, there is this last handshake that happens where, how do we make sure media connects all the way down to the store, and how do we actually build CRM? And there was some great stuff, by the way, Chaitan can tell you about the Corona bot and other stuff we talked about with ABI, which was really good for me in my early part of my career here, because I think Chaitan and the team on ABI came up with some great ideas of how do we do media campaigns using big publishers or new thinking to drive clients to hand raise and say, hey, I'm Lauren Walker and I like Corona sunsets, and I'm going to tweet myself on, or I'm going to put myself on Instagram. So the same concept came up here for Adidas, and hopefully we try it out with VF. And the thought was, Snapchat's a really big publisher that Adidas likes, so they want to do a lot with them. Snapchat's starting to do some stuff in artificial reality. That's a new area of interest for a lot of brands now who have kind of retail stores as well as online presence. So we said, all right, why don't we do a deal with Snapchat? We'll do a big campaign around a product launch through Snapchat, do some stuff with their AR, but then let's actually link that to an app that's an Adidas-owned app. There will be a place that Adidas then will collect information on their customers that allow them to engage with their product in a whole new way. So we created this app that allowed us to do artificial reality on your phone, and you literally hold, I'm gonna demonstrate now, get ready. You hold the phone against your shoe, against your foot, and it basically uses like foot scan technology and like facial scan technology to actually decide what shoe size you have. So say you're a 10.28, and then you send that shoe size to like a 3D printer that's in the store, and you go to the store and pick it up in 3 days. So now what's happened is Adidas has who you are, your device ID. They've now basically linked out to you to send you to the store to have that in-store experience, to hopefully have you buy even more Adidas before you leave the store. And so those are the kinds of things that we started here with a Snapchat publisher relationship, drove to a device that allowed us to connect CRM data, you could say, right, into the client, and then drove that person into the shop to maybe buy more and to like be more immersed with the brand. So those are the kinds of things I think I challenge, you know, everyone in this group to like think beyond the borders of what we do today and think about how more and more of what we can do with media is helping our clients know their customers better so that we can continue to position ourselves as a place of we want people data from which we can plan and deliver the strategies. But again, it's thinking about all of the levers I have. What do I have from D2D? What do I have from iPro? And don't think of it as like D2D does MMM, you know, iPro does this. Think about like one level below. I think we need to not box the brands into specific things, but what is the data and what are the analysis people do in those areas that we can apply across the board? So there were like 3 actions that I have for you guys. I think number 1 is, look around your local market and get to know your local data team because they're there. And I think they'd love to know you, especially those of you in 100% client facing, you know, new business or just business development jobs. I think the other thing I would do is, I'm happy to send you guys some links, but start joining like local webinars that Adobe or Salesforce or any of these other companies host. Because I'm sure we do a lot with Google and all the other publishers, but what about those other players in your market? Sitecore is another one up in, I think Magnetics does quite a bit with them. And I don't know, the resolution on this slide is horrible.
Wait, yeah, Alison just messaged me. What's going on? Should I share again?
Yeah, try sharing again, Hazel, because
it's okay. If you guys have it, I know what it is from memory. And I guess the last bit is, although we talked a lot about the people-based data thing, the other thing that I would, you know, I'm happy to follow up with you guys if you have a question is, as we think about media effect, yep, it's okay, it's not working. It's
okay.
Fine. As we think about media effectiveness, and as we think about, you know, are we giving clients the right level of reporting? If the whole thing we're doing is about people-based, and we can start to think about reach and frequency, and we can start to think about what is the real, you know, kind of goal of certain media campaigns and can we measure it, the entire dialogue again starts to change. And it says, is it what you really want to do is have this person buy 5 sets of shoes a year, and this person, you just want them to start to know your brand exists. So if we start thinking in all different ways and start looking at the people data and the technology together, we can actually start to getting beyond just clicks and impressions, which is hard to tie directly to net revenues. Whereas I've run this campaign that made this person buy 5 shoes. Okay, now I know that that's net revenues up. So that's a whole nother topic for another day, but I think that's where we see a lot of our conversations going with clients beyond just the regular KPIs and kind of I analyze and other basic reporting. So that, I mean, that's still good and it's still the stuff we need to do, but I think there's a chance for us again to own that next layer of space in that marketplace. So can we take any more questions, or do you want to put them into their little working groups now?
No, I think we can take questions. There was a question from Ramsey a bit earlier, which was, is there a multi-tiered M1 product that works on a narrower scale in emerging markets where the broad spectrum of CRM data is not fully available?
Yeah, so Ramsey, I'm working with, in particular with Joe Squire and Alex in MENA to try to go from CCS panel up to CCS panel plus. So we're starting to talk to a bunch of other data providers. I used to work with Arabia Weather in my old job. So I've asked, and I know they have like device ID and interesting publisher information. And then I think there's a few other companies we're looking at getting data from. So we're just kicking that off. So if you want to join, I think that the more the merrier at this point to try to get to the short list of who we can co-opt.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ramsey, we can't hear you. So maybe if you type your question in, and we'll come back to you.
And maybe the way that sum that up is if the folks here have not seen the slides from Singapore on the, like if you haven't had your, what is it called, your cascade of the Singapore event, and if enough of you tell, I guess, Alison and Hazel that I'm happy to send you that section where John Lee talked about Essentially, this is our strategy for M1 now. And I think the one thing that didn't quite land, from what I can tell, is that actually we're now calling pretty much everything M1. And so what that means is CCS is, so how do I say this? CCS is now rebranded M1 Panel. Amnet Audience Center is sort of, but not really, renamed M1 Device, because you need more than Amnet Audience Center, and Amnet Audience Center still exists, but there's this middle kind of proxy area that's back to that chart of that kind of lady running. So the middle bit is called M1 Device, because we're either using an IP address or a device ID on a phone. And then you get up to, I think it's M1 Person or something like that. So I was hearing some feedback from a recent pitch we did in the UK, and it was basically the team presenting it said, and we have M1 CCS, so M1 Panel here, and we have M1 Device ID over here, and we have M1 Person in this country. And the idea is it's supposed to be, the whole thing is M1. What's different is the way we do identity or people based on the country, because that's what the law allows for, and that's what's, feasible. So it's not like in a pitch where you have a global client or multiple countries that you would say, I've got M1 this, M1 that, M1 that. It's kind of all M1, and it'll have the same user interface. So the client, when they see it, looks the same. The identity is just done in a different way. So I think that's something that I don't know if everyone has really understood that. And it's clear to me that most people didn't. But that was the intent, is to make it easier for us in the storytelling. So Peter, if I think about you, right? It's supposed to make it easier in the storytelling to say, we have this system called M1 that does people, place, planning, and activation. And the way we do people-based varies by the market. And so there's different levels of identity we use to do that. And it's live, everywhere today. And so, and we are moving up to people as fast as we can, as fast as the data, and as I said about Ramsey and like UAE, it's like, how fast can we get there? And for those of you in Sweden, Christina and Martin are doing a hell of a job getting M1 essentially like device level up and running for P&G, and it should be ready for more clients very soon. So from a European perspective, we've got UK, we've got, as for all intents and purposes, and this is not official, we've got M1 in Italy. For any Italians on the phone. We have something very close to it in Spain. So I think as you look around the market, we actually have a lot, and actually Russia, they're already doing deterministic data. So there's a lot more markets that have M1 type capabilities. We just haven't called it that yet. And so I think now it's about a few more meetings, a few more, executive sign-offs. And I think in about 2 weeks, the official communique will be made. But the big thing for, I think, everyone here to walk away with is M1 is the whole thing, right? And it's just how we do people is different, or how we, talk about people is different.
Wonderful.
And I think I forgot, like the one thing I did, Nanya, I think because you're in finance in the UK, the one to do I had for you is that we're really trying to track our data revenues. So I work with Emma and Nick Thomas quite a bit, and there's an attempt now to try to figure out, are we actually looking at our internal data, and can we actually measure, are our clients buying more of this? Are we giving it away for free? How is this whole thing going? And so I think that's where another, I guess, takeaway for you guys is we've been trying to keep everything inside the media pitch kind of like contracts as what they'd expect us to do. And everything that's above and beyond on data expertise and consulting, we've been trying to do in separate, separate SOWs that they have to pay for, so we can give it away. And I think that's also a change in the way of working, because they're paying small consultancies to do stuff that they tell us they want us to do for free, and that has to change.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
Nick Thomas, I know. Who's Emma?
Emma, I think it's Emma Stanford or Emma Bennett. One of those.
It's Emma Stansfield.
Stansfield, that's it. Yeah, she usually does my Bangalore polls and tells me where the money is.
Yeah, perfect.
I know we're going the right direction. So that was a lot. I hope that was, I hope everyone here walked away with something, useful.
Well, Ramsey just wrote, that's the first time I properly understand it. So that's good.
Yeah.
Have we got time for one more question?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have a bit more time for questions, Lauren? Because I know that we.
I think so. Let me see what I've got next, and if I can push it back if I need to.
Yeah, so there was someone who wanted to
go for it, at least in the meantime. I'll just be late.
Okay, so hi, Dan from the Car Global team in London. What do you think should be our messaging to CMOs? So if one of the lessons that we learned from programmatic is that the operational nuts and bolts of how our tools work isn't a great and or interesting story, what ways in which have you seen this successfully told to the storytellers on the client side?
So I think one of the greatest sessions we have recently, where I think the whole team walked away really excited, is what Visium and Merkel did for Claudia, the CMO for IKEA, fairly recently. And I think it nets out to that kind of that whole story I just told you around people-based, but it started from a point of customer experience. How do we really start to think about, here's the investments I've made in marketing, where I'm probably using 20 applications and have divided budgets across lots of different people who ultimately, if they pooled their budgets, they would actually see things much more similarly and invest that much better. And on the media side, how do I think about out of home and mobile as actually a shared budget, because out of home is mobile? How do I think about some of the things I'm doing in performance and partners in line with when someone's actually inside a store? So there's a lot of things that all relate back to what is the customer experience and how do all the investments I've made actually start to make that better so I get this bigger lifetime value of customer. Because that's really, you could say, what's in their minds is how do I make a better customer experience to have a higher lifetime value. So there's some really good stuff that I think they've written there, and we'll continue to refine it. But that's ultimately where we need to be, right? And that's where I think you also have the idea of what resonates really well is saying, you know, most people know now that their customer data is their ultimate asset, and clients, and this is something I'm stealing from Richard Lees, but he does it really well. He's like, there's 3 types of kind of companies out there. And hopefully I get this right. But there's the ones that are essentially indirect that, you know, need to talk to people through an intermediary. There's another one that is direct, which basically has a direct relationship. So you think about it like a bank and stuff like that. And then you've got these kind of like, no, that's not direct. That wasn't direct. Hold on. Term is something like an insurance company, that every time you have like an insurance policy come up, that's the only time you really talk to them. And otherwise you're not really that worried. There's other people like an Amazon, which who knows what model they fit into, where you kind of see them every day and you're always telling them something about you. And then you've got everyone else we deal with, like a JLR, like an ABI, to some degree like Adidas, even though they have, you know, 4% e-com traffic of people buying. Most people are buying through JD Sports or through a local high street, so they really have no visibility to what's going on. So in order to truly understand, am I building the right product? Am I actually getting to the people I need to get to grow my brand? That's the kind of stuff that everyone's trying to figure out. And I think people have been on, especially because of what I did at IBM, every single project I did in the last 5 years at IBM was all around how can I get a single view of customer so I know how to invest correctly and delight my customers and delight more of them to get more money out of them. Like, how do I increase that share of wallet? And that's where I think we're at such a unique place now. And I've always seen the DMP as that point of pivot from where you have a MarTech and an Accenture provider and where you have a media agency. And so the new pivot point for us between that is now the customer data platform and connected data platform. So that's the big hype that's happening now. So you have Telium, you have Treasure Data, you have Agile One, LITDE, which is actually a CDP that we're partnered with across all of Dan via Isobar, but now it's a global agreement. So that's kind of the area where everyone is still trying to get to. How do I get to this one customer view that connects all these digital touch points? And that's why I think us as a media agency, having Isobar, having Merkel, and then having what we're doing in media with iPro in the middle, kind of making a glue, we actually have a really, really, really great story that no one else can talk about, because we are data native from Merkel and we are media native from Cara and Visium. And that's a very, very rare mix. And I think we're privileged right now in the IKEA situation and the ABI situation to be hearing our client tell us that. And both of those clients are massive, massive data, like literate people and teams.
Wonderful, thank you, Lauren. Is there another question for Lauren? A couple more minutes left before we move into
so I've got one.
I can stay on till half 3:30 if we need to keep going, and if that works for everyone else's time, I'll like hang around.
So, Laura, I'd just like to get your perspective on one of the bits of feedback I think we've had through pitches is clients struggling to see the difference between what we're saying on M1 and what our competitors are saying on their different named M platforms.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your point of view on that anyway, but then the way you've sort of described M1 evolving into different markets, does that add another sort of layer of complexity to that, because we have a slightly different description therefore of M1 for each market we go into?
This is, I think, the other critical point that we also, I recently fed back to the M1 team yesterday. As I said, I think we felt it a little bit in Adidas, and I think I can't remember the other pitch that I was on, where we literally felt like we're now seeing enough marketing material that, Publicis is saying we do one-to-one. I think it was what came out of their like recent shareholder meeting is you read their script and it was like, it's the same. And when you think about the fact of there are parts of our business that are really, really data savvy and kind of data natives, and I'm somewhere in that camp. Most of the people we pitch to are not, and you guys know this, right? That it's really hard to understand the difference. And this goes back to, in some ways, what I said to Peter before about they don't know how bad programmatic and audience selection is today. So when you tell them that I'm selecting just a person, it's kind of lost on them. Or they think they already bought a technology that does that because that's what Crux and Blue Kai and everyone else told them. So I think that's the element that because Merkle and the M1 platform has come from a area of doing like MarTech and CRM and data, and we're coming from a point of media, down towards data, it's a different audience that we're speaking to, and they may not really know how different that is. And even if it is, it just means things are that much more efficient. And then you kind of move on. You're like, okay, so you're targeting more efficiently people. What are you doing now with my brand? How are you helping me make better campaigns that get more people buying my stuff, right? So M1 becomes a piece of a much bigger story. And the thing that I've seen is M1 has gone from being like the centerpiece of all global pitches to being, this is a product that lets us do some stuff, but the big strategy is thinking about how do we use media to have these people-related conversations, and how do we start to change to integrate your systems with our systems? How do we think about e-com and brand working together? So I feel like that's where there's a bit of a change, and depending on how sophisticated your customer is, that's where M1 is just one of the technical capabilities that's allow us to do things more efficient, and they have to spend less money, right? So I think that's what I'm starting to see from the people I'm working with, is this realization that it's not, last year it was different, this year it's not, right? Everyone's saying the same thing, and throw UI on it, and there you go. So your second part of your question about when M1's different in different markets, I think that's where it becomes, again, really important to say, in our market, the laws are like this. In our market, there is no people data available. So what I'd rather do is try to use media as a way of getting you information on your customers, right? So it turns us into almost like this consultancy SI type partner that's trying to use media as a way of growing their data literacy inside their company coffers, which is slightly different than what we would have done before, right? It's more around, here's the kind of muse that we're after. Now we think that muse is going to show up on Facebook, or we think we're going to do this with Google AdWords, or we think we're going to do this over here. And so now I think we have to be a bit more challenging and creative to ourselves to say, why are we really choosing this channel? And how can we get this to be a place where actually our brand clients are getting people data out of it? Because if you're in Latvia, if you're in Hungary, if you're in Netherlands, you can't just walk off the street and buy this data. So the only way we're really going to build it is by building it through really good campaigns that then have customers saying, hey, that's me. And then also working with our local publishers. So it's a very different market for us, because we're literally having to we are building the market. We are building the business.
I really hate to stop you because it's so juicy. It's okay. So juicy. I want to at least have some time for the the group to work in groups, but it's been absolutely brilliant. Feel free to stick around for a few minutes as I introduce the groups to the exercise, but thank you so much for that. And as we've seen, it seems that this has been a really well needed introduction and overview of the technology that you're speaking about. So thank you very much for that.
And I'll take some of the, I've written a lot of this stuff down, so I'll try to make sure that at least for this, collective group, we almost set up a separate session for you guys so you can do some Q&A with the M1 team, because I think they need to hear that, right? It's almost like a focus group of, here's what I tried.
Awesome, thank you. Brilliant. Hazel, would you mind grabbing the slides up? So I want to introduce you to the exercise. What we're going to do is we're going to get you working in your pods actually, and reflecting on the content that Lauren has just given you and thinking about how you can start to apply it to your roles. So one of the exercises we asked you to do, a lot of this was, a lot of what Lauren said was about speaking to your clients and connecting this to your clients and figuring out where your clients are. And one of the things we asked you to do over the past couple of weeks was look at the empathy map. Hazel, would you mind grabbing the slides up? So we asked you to look at the empathy map in relation to one of your clients, trying to really understand what they were feeling, what they were thinking from where they were standing, so that perhaps you'd start to gain some more insights into their motivations and their needs and their behaviours, and start to test some of your assumptions. So actually we're going to connect what you did with your empathy map between that and what you've just heard from Lauren. And a lot of what Lauren was talking about is, there's a massive technology piece and a lot of understanding around the actual technology. Hazel, if you just click to the next slide. And Lauren mentioned, 3 calls to action. One was building your internal network, so finding your data squad. Second one was external network, so making sure that you're grabbing information from outside and you're connecting with key influencers. But the third one was about building your client network. And as much as this is about introducing the technology to your clients and helping them to understand how it works, it's also about change and taking people with you on a journey, the kind of transformation they have to go through to actually get their heads around this and implement it within their business. Some of the stuff that Lauren spoke about was actually encouraging your clients to see you in a different way, seeing you more as a consultancy and a partner, rather than just a media agency. So there's a kind of mindset and behaviour and thinking change there as well. So the exercise that we want you to do in your pods is to reflect on that. And Hazel, if you could just flick to the next slide. We're going to ask you to do a future mapping exercise. So how the idea is, how will you take clients on this journey? You're going through a journey, you're going through a learning journey yourselves, but a lot of this, as I say, is about sort of transforming the way that your clients think about you, almost transforming the relationship that you have, transforming their knowledge, transforming their attitude to this kind of things and how they can implement it within their business. So we're going to ask you to do a bit of future mapping exercise. It's in 2 parts as we get you to work in your pods. The first part, the next slide, is we want you to kind of visualize where you want to be in 6 months' time. So thinking about the clients that you have, the challenges that you're facing with your clients, reflecting back to your empathy maps, thinking about what Lauren has introduced to you. In 6 months' time, ideally, where would you be with your clients in this journey, in terms of introducing this technology to them, in terms of changing their attitudes, changing their behaviours? I'm actually just going to ask you to do that for 5 minutes. In the second half of the exercise, which is 10 minutes, is we're going to ask you to start thinking about how you're going to get there. So what conversations are you going to start having? What questions are you going to ask? What interactions are you going to have with your clients? Which clients are you going to start working with first? So we want you to think, start thinking to the future. Where is it you want to get to in an ideal world? How is this transformation going to look in 6 months' time? And then start filling in the gaps. How could you get there? And you can start thinking in terms of some of the leadership insights that you've learned over the course as well. How do you influence? How do you persuade? How do you include clients in the conversation? How do you co-create with your clients as well? So first half, where do you want to be? And the second half, how do you think you can get there? And I think Hazel is going to start sending you off into your pod group. So we're splitting you up based on your pod groups now. And you'll have a chance to kind of have a conversation with with your groups in that way. So in 15 minutes, sorry, this says 20 minutes, so we're going to cut it down a little bit. So 5 minutes for the first bit and 10 minutes for the second bit, 15 minutes in total. So we'll call you back after 15 minutes and get your feedback. Okay, Hazel, do your magic. See you in 15 minutes, everyone.
The newsletter
I gotta pee.
and the report.
Hi. How you doing, Tim?
I'm good. Sorry, let me get off
Yeah.
mute. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
all good.
mind-blowing, isn't it? That content. I mean, she's just so energetic as well. There was so much in there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it feels like it's so different for each country, each agency, each client, the legal specifics. I think different parts of the group are at different points. Some people are doing it, other people are still, I'm guessing, looking at it as though, you know, I know that this is coming. I know that I need to get up to speed on it. So I think it's very timely. Be interesting to see within their conversations. I think it's one of those ones where it's a shame. I think they really probably need quite a lot of time to discuss it amongst themselves. Just where are you at? Where are we at?
Yeah.
We're doing this. We've not done that. This country's like this, or we're more like this. So I don't know. Just maybe even we could even encourage them to find some time. They want to follow it up individually or within their pods.
Yeah.
There's so much they advance in these conversations, but let's see.
Yeah, feel free to jump in and say that actually, because I think that's a really good point.
Just that sort of sharing of experiences, you know. It's with them if they want to do that.
Yeah. I have to pop to the ladies as well. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
No problem. Oh, that was like a tag toilet break there. Hazel comes back and Alison goes.
Hey, sorry, I was just discussing with Lauren. I'm just double checking the questions, and that she also wanted to set up that extra session directly with Merkel and with the people from legal, so they hear the questions direct, and we can even go further than that as well. Sorry, what?
Welcome back. I think you're all starting to come back now. Slowly.
We have a few people still in their breakout rooms.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Excellent. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope that you were able to have, I know it was a short time and there was a lot. I mean, as I said, I found that presentation pretty mind-blowing, and it feels that some of you have had a very similar experience, and whether this is kind of something that you have had experience in working with before, or whether you're very new to this content, it seems like it was a really good opportunity to start making some of this a lot more tangible for you. So before we go into feedback, one thing that I'd like to iterate is that this is probably just the start of the conversation, and there's a lot more opportunity for you to continue this conversation within your pods and across the group. So I would urge you after this session to perhaps use Slack to post your reflections, post where you are, ask other people for their insights and their experience as well. And we'll look into how we can kind of keep this conversation going as well, because as I say, it seems like we need more time on this, and you would like more time to discuss this as well. But what I would like to hear is what you've been discussing, and particularly with a view to kind of what's next, because we asked you to kind of think forward to the future and think, where would you like to be in 6 months' time? And then we asked you to start thinking about how you might start to get there. And I'm curious to know that after this session, what would be your next steps? What are you kind of thinking? What's top of your mind now? So just a general sharing of what you discussed. But if there's anything tangible that you think you will move forward with, then please share that as well. Who would like to go first? Any interesting discussions from your group? What were you discussing?
Go on. I'll go first. I can't take the silence. Yeah. So we talked about a couple of things. So I think we started talking about everybody seems to be looking for something slightly different from what we've been talking about. So John Powell in the UK, he talked about his immediate kind of instinct is that it can help us do better, more accurate media planning and buying. We talked about for Spain how the challenges that they have in terms of working with FMCG clients who don't have that a strong level of first-party data, and are probably going to have a lot less after the end of next month. Chetan talked a little bit about their success on Honda, and I think all of his there's a level of reticence, and that reticence sits because there are very few real examples of how people are using this tool, and we hear a lot about it's, and it's launched and it's up and running in the States, but of all the markets which are great at sharing with and what's happening in their country, the States is generally by far, and apologies to any of my American colleagues on this call, the Americans are never that great at sharing with the rest of the world. So it's a black box in a sense that I don't think many people understand it, and a black box in terms of people don't really see what the outputs are either. So there's a little bit of kind of fear and worry. We recognize, I think there's a huge opportunity. I think everybody recognizes the importance, but no one's quite sure what the killer application is and what that story up is into clients. When Chetan was talking about Honda, that actually they had a client who was already asking those questions, which makes it easier. It's when clients are not asking, and we're going in to talk about it. It would be great to hear people's thoughts on how they're approaching it or thinking about approaching it and meeting this challenge head on, because at the minute this isn't sitting very much with client teams or strategists. It's sitting very much with data teams and data people, and that is, there has to be a bridge between those conversations and getting that into our media and our marketer clients. And I've yet to see a beautiful bridge which links the two. If anyone has any bridges they can share, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, can anyone speak to that at all? Dan's question of making that connection between the clients that are already talking about it and the clients that aren't aware of it, aren't talking about it, the data team and the media team.
I don't mind jumping in. It's not really an answer to it, but we kind of touched upon that topic as well. That a lot of the people in the group's clients were at very different stages of understanding what they were able to do on one hand, and also on the other hand were at different levels of openness about what data they had. With some clients getting very excited about their data, but actually just keeping it entirely internally and not sharing it with us. But others who are joined at the hip with us and sharing it, as much as possible. I mean, from a personal perspective on the B2B area, typically all of our clients are desperate to share their information with us so that we can come back to them and tell them what we're able to do with it, because the B2B buying journey can be so complex and take so much time that any help in a small area will potentially have big impacts. But we didn't have any solutions on bridging that gap, I'm afraid. So I'm just kind of reinforcing your point, Dan.
Just to kind of ask the question, I suppose, I see that challenge exactly the same in terms of, the sales force that is strategy and client teams being able to talk about M1, which I think is being refined, and I think the narrative is building. But that data and kind of operational team, whether that's Amplifier, whoever, not necessarily connecting with it. So that bridge, I suppose my question is, the first kind of provocation from Lauren around connecting with the DNA or data teams. I mean, how many people have interface into that team? How many people know who that team is? I mean, I for one don't. I have a local data team and I prospect that I go to, but the wider team that beyond the M1 head of M1 Stephanie I've conversed with, I don't know who that kind of data team is to even bridge that. Does anyone else?
No, that was one of the things that we were kind of talking about in our group, which is, I think we're getting better and better through pitches in articulating the theory and the sort of benefit, and I think you get a lot of people nodding. I think the challenge, and certainly one of the things that I was kind of thinking I need to set myself over the next 6 months is, who are the people that can take this to reality? Because at the moment I certainly don't know enough of those people to kind of actually start looking properly at clients, saying, well, this is where we can help them, this is where their solutions are, and this is how we're going to put this into action. So sorry, I'm not being helpful. I'm just agreeing with you.
No, that's fine. It's I don't. It's not necessarily about having an answer. Maybe, for me, if there's that obviously we've all been set that task. Maybe collectively, if we could get to a bit of a data cheat sheet, I'll put it straight on Slack as soon as I've got it.
But I think that what it sounds like is that there's lots of questions being raised rather than answers and ideas and actions. And if you want to share what those questions are, then I think this is a definitely useful space to do that and to start off with. So if you do have any other sort of insights from your discussion around there's more gaps we need to fill, then please feel free to share that now. What other questions came up in your groups?
So I think it's just financially not viable. I think if the group would decide to get to purchase the module.
I feel like that disconnect it runs through quite a lot of things actually. Like one of the things that we're talking about as well. One of the things I, in 6 months' time, what I'd like to achieve is knowing what we're going to do with this data, and kind of it's because I feel like we're getting better at talking about it and talking to clients, and clients are kind of some clients are coming along with us on that journey, but I guess we're not very clear about what that means for their business in 6 months' time, or what we're going to do differently in 6 months' time, or the insights that we're going to derive from that data. Because the clients have probably got more data now than they know what to do with, and because I guess for us a lot of the activation sits outside of what we do, and it sits in teams that work in different silos, and it's really understanding what that's going to look like before knowing kind of what we can do with it. So it's another question that I don't have an answer to, and I'm not sure anyone else does. But one of the things that came out of my group certainly is that I feel reassured that everyone is in the same boat, because there is certainly a huge element of fear, more fear than excitement for me, I think, because there's huge gaps, and it's clear, it's evident now in this conversation that none of us are really that clear as to what it's going to all look like in 6 months' time. So, but I guess we could start trying to mitigate some of that fear. But for me, I still don't know what it's in 6 months' time what I'm hoping to achieve. I just want to know what we can actually do with it, I guess.
Great.
But one of the things, I know we're getting into it, but one of the things so we sold it into a client, and then there's been kind of a deeper follow-up to come back on naturally the questions the clients had around how we activate it, who activates it, the legal complexities. One of the things that was clear from our perspective is that there's kind of this kind of strategy and media team, and then a data science team. So for me, if we can bring that to bear, or understand who in our collective brands, or who that might be within this group, that would be a starting point. But I do get the feeling that slide was lifted and shifted from a US deck, which kind of goes back to Dan's point about the use cases all being in the US and not much sharing. Which, how relevant might that be to us?
Great, thank you. Well, thank you all for sharing your questions and your discussions. I think now is probably a good time to do a checkout. And I would think what we can do with the checkout, the question is, this has been quite a juicy discussion. Lots of questions have come up. So, next steps are, what do you need now? What do you need to move this conversation on? What is going to help you to start making those connections? What is going to help you to start having those conversations? So yeah, if we check out with that, what do you now need? And we'll see how we can follow up with that. So let's just do it popcorn style, as you feel. Just come in and do your checkout.
I can perhaps go first if that's okay. I think what I need is like a genuine, deep understanding of the problems M1 solves, like across the board, not just the superficial level in a pitch, because then I'll be able to help understand how to, to get clients to take it on board, etc., etc. I think this has made me realize my understanding is superficial at best, and I need to address that.
Great, thank you, Chris.
Hi, it's Elena here. Oh, sorry.
After you, ladies first.
Thank you. So I think what Lauren was saying on the call earlier, I'd like to connect him with the likes of Nick Thomas, our EMEA CFO, just to understand the commercials, or not the commercials, to understand the discussions he's had around, how do we make money from this, and I guess so that I can support the client teams going forward in the commercial discussions, sort of from the outset. So that's my key takeaway from today.
Thank you.
Cool. So what I was going to say is, sort of reflecting what Chris said as well, is that sort of case study understanding of stuff that has helped before. But as I mentioned to my group as well, in the world of B2B, we're marketing over time frames to sort of segmented company job titles, profiles and stuff like that. I'm hoping that what M1's going to be able to achieve is to turn those profiles into humans. And that's kind of what we talk about a lot in Gyro anyway. So as soon as we're able to do that, it's going to be incredibly powerful, I think. But I think one way that we're going to be able to get relevant solutions for the clients is actually by taking people who really understand under the bonnet of M1 into the client and talking to them about what data is available and how they can use that data with the M1 platform to solve their problems. So, you know, we'll learn over time by that sort of consultancy method, I think.
Great, thank you.
I can go. So on a personal level, I think what I need is to understand MarTech better. So, you know, DMPs, Adobe, CRM systems, Salesforce. You know, at the moment, my knowledge sits very much in kind of Google 360 media and, you know, what M1 means to that. So that's for me. I suppose for the group, I feel that whilst, you know, every stage of this process has been really useful and enlightening, but it feels like this is the one where we could help each other the most. So I don't know whether Slack's the forum or whatever forum, but I'd love to connect with anyone that's up for it in terms of building use cases, understanding how we find where that bridge becomes a link, etc. But I'm fully up for that if anyone else is.
And Pete, feel free to kick that off in Slack as well, just by posting some reminders and some questions out to the group.
Yeah, I was actually just going to jump in and follow that up. Just to say that really, you know, within those Slack pod groups or within the bigger Slack forum there, please, my need is I'd love to just hear more from you guys about how you guys could help each other. And I think that, you know, we've spoken before when we've had the calls within the pod groups about what's going to add value to that Slack interaction. I just see this as something a lot more concrete, where if you guys can be sharing experiences and needs, I think this is something that really, for me, is very much along those lines of something concrete where you can actually be helping each other.
Thanks, Tim. Who's next with the checkout?
I could go next. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. No, you first. You go first.
So for me, quite an interesting point is because I come from data measurement background. It's quite interesting to understand what kind of data the platform would generate that we could use to measure efficiency better as well. Because at the moment we're using quite aggregated data and cookie level data to do the attribution. And one of my personal challenges was also to bring the attribution modeling to my region as well. So that could add a new layer in terms of like personal level measurement. And I would like to really understand how it could kind of join these three measurement methods together and how it changes it, because it probably will.
So can I ask the question, if we would organize an extra session with Lauren and representatives from Merkle, where you could have a deeper dive with your questions, but also rely, you know, back what you see as the challenges in terms of narratives that you need to have. Do you think that would be useful if we would organize that in the context of this program?
Yeah.
Okay. Then the other question is, of course, that I know that all of your time is precious, and therefore, of course, we have content prepared, you know, not overrunning or taking more of your time. Would you guys be prepared to spend extra time? So if we organize an extra hour session, would you be able to make that time available? You can do thumbs up for yes or thumbs down for no, and then I got like a feel for it. Okay, fine.
I took a screenshot, so now we're holding count. We'll hold.
And please be aware that we then will need to align probably Merkel's and Lauren's agenda first and foremost, and then come back to you as to when it will happen. So if you could then hopefully prioritize that as much as possible, or we can represent you as well if you post all the additional questions if you couldn't personally attend in the Slack, of course. Okay, then we can look into how we could organize that.
I don't know if I'm going off piece here, and I know this is recorded, but is everyone aware of the client summit that's upcoming for EMEA on Merkle? because there could be a bit of context of waiting until the content for that has been generated, because it might benefit the session.
When is that happening, Pete?
23rd of May.
Okay.
So it might just be we get a more beneficial session.
Yeah, so they could use it actually to make it far more kind of targeted. So thank you for sharing that golden nugget. We'll definitely win them over in that way. The win-win is clear. Okay, so we'll see it as one of our to-dos from this session. But in the meantime, I would like to remind you, so the content of the session or of the program is, how do you lead yourself differently? How do you lead, work together with others? How do you make the most of our network? And so how do you also talk differently to clients in order to lead effectively? And I hope you felt today that we've touched on all of these angles, right? And hoping to leverage that even more. So it's definitely exploitation instead of exploration, to build on Tim's session from last time as well that we're building on. So so think about it yourself as well. What can you do more as a leader? Right? Think about your team members here as well, but also think about us here as a community and the wider community within them. So we've put a call to action in Lauren's slide as well, as you probably remember. Think about who, apart from the session that we will be organizing, who else could you be reaching out to? Inside or outside, and to, like you're saying, to up your knowledge about MarTech if you're predominantly more knowledgeable about AdTech, for instance, and how does it link in with one another, but also how can you actively also help with the people who have more of a MarTech background, maybe to also make their narrative more understandable by the vast majority of the population who aren't MarTech specialists. Because that represents our customers, right, base? Good.
Just
I'll leave it to here.
A few more minutes for check-ins. Who hasn't had a chance to go? Because we're asking, what do you need?
Okay. I think I agree with everything that we have said so far about what we need. The use cases would be great. And also in terms of global clients, I would also appreciate if we have a view of what is being done at the global to be able to work aligned in the local level.
Fantastic, thank you. Who's next?
I think personally, I just need to join the dots a bit more. I think, we talked a lot about kind of silos and not really connecting very well. I think, I think that we need to make an effort as well. I need to certainly make an effort of trying to do that and trying to understand what is everyone doing on that journey from selling a concept to actually activation and seeing it all the way through.
Wonderful, thank you. Who's next?
For me, it's more working on my knowledge first to better understand the total scope, to then in the next phase better understand the client's needs. So I think it's been said by many people before. So really better understanding what it's all about, who is involved, and I think working on the internal network will be my first step to do so.
Brilliant, thank you, Aline. Okay, who hasn't checked out yet?
Yeah, I have to agree with the previous people, but yeah, I think like personally, I have to get better understanding of how to break the silos, because I think so far, like DDS has been doing their own thing and Karat their own, and Isobar our own, and then because we need to have the same story for our clients, because I think there's a lot of things to improve there at the moment. And for example, we have been pushing the marketing automation. Sorry, I just keep talking about that today without thinking about a lot about like how do the media agencies and the and the paid media goes into that, because we should think that service as a DAN, not just isobar. So
wonderful. Thank you. Who's next?
In my case, I need to understand the value of M1 in terms of ROI for our clients before selling it. Sometimes we sell things that we're not really sure the value that is behind. And until then, I will sell data-driven strategies, which is not easy either, and then substitute the M1 platform and all that is around, and have it all in place.
Brilliant, thank you. Ariella, you haven't checked out yet?
Sure. I had explained in my pod that this topic was a bit harder for me to connect to, since I actually have pitched M1 to the client. I still didn't feel like I had a full understanding of it. It really came down to the price point of how much they would have to pay. And because of that, we've worked, my team internally over the past few months, we've worked on building our own tools to be able to do a lot of the data processing that M1 was going to be able to offer. So it's a bit, I don't know the right word to describe it, but I wish this conversation happened maybe like 4 months ago. My response would be different.
Excellent, thank you so much, Ariella. Okay, and I think finally but not least, Mikolaj.
Yes, and I need a couple of things. One is more time for building the local narrative around M1. Secondly, I need to find the budget for to build the platform itself. So, because as Lauren mentioned, M1 is a common interface, which is common across the markets, but the backend is different. So, and now we need to build the backend, and it needs the money for investment.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mikolaj. Thank you so much, everyone. I think this has been a really interesting session, lots of discussion and lots to continue with. Hazel, what happens next? Is there the video will be posted online and there's a task next week?
On Thursday, we'll launch a task, and then if you guys need any help with your map, please raise a hand. Yeah, and I was asking Jorge, you're in Madrid, so maybe you and I can grab some coffee. I'm here for a couple more weeks. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And Alison, thank you for driving this with Lauren. It's been really, really powerful.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.